And it would be really interesting if your fiance let you take it to that level. Because you could just keep stepping. You could just stay on SARMs the next year and just keep stepping up the dosage, switch compounds. Keep stepping up the dosage, switch compounds.
A disclaimer and a warning to anybody that's about to watch this video. The views and opinions in this video are just that, views and opinions. Everything you see is going to be done for research and entertainment purposes only. I do not advise nor condone the use of anything you're about to see in this video. Everything is just for entertainment purposes only. Whatever you do with the information you get from this video is all up to you, but ultimately, don't be stupid. All right. Just got done training a little bit here at Super Training, showing you guys kind of my spot. That's where I hang out, way over there. This, of course, is the podcast studio of Mark Bell's Power Project podcast. I wanted to do a super quick week 8 recap, just because I have a really cool conversation with Tony Hughes coming up right after this. My body weight is around 195, 197. It's been fluctuating there past couple weeks. It reminds me a lot of when I was at 178 and 181. It just kind of back and forth right there, hasn't gone anywhere. So that's part of what I wanted to talk to Tony about. And I still have been only taking 20 milligrams of ostarine per day. Will Tony convince me to up the dosages? You guys will just have to wait and see. Training has been going well. Training with Mark every day in the morning. The early 3 a.m. wake-up call has been kind of rough, but it's been totally worth it. All the numbers have been real consistent in the gym. I feel great. I've been getting a lot of work done because we start so early. And, you know, like I said, I get to train with Mark, so he knows my body better than I do, and he knows my strength better than I do, and he knows exactly what to call for, almost every single lift. So with that said, let's just go ahead and just hop right into this interview. Let me know what you guys think at I am Andrew Z on Instagram, and I'll check you guys later. All right, guys, this guy does not need any introduction. If it wasn't for him and Mark Bell, none of this would even be possible. So, of course, I'm with none other than Sir Tony Hughes, Tony Gigante. First off, welcome back to the States and congratulations on your daughter.
Everything went great. I had the baby over in the Philippines. I was there for a month. I did some SARM's megadosing experiments that I'll be sharing later. And now it's awesome to get back and see how in the last month you've put on a significant amount of size. Yeah. Like I'm looking at you, I can't see your legs and stuff, but I'm just looking at your arms. Your arm size, you must have put an inch on your arms easily.
Yeah, I wish I had measured. I didn't measure like actual like inches of my arms and whatnot. But, I'll just recap because we haven't spoken since you left. I put on 15 pounds total in 5 weeks. And again, this is just off of, so that would have been 2 weeks off of 1 milligram, or 1 capsule, so 10 milligrams of ostarine. And then, so 2 weeks of that, and then 3 weeks of 20 milligrams per day. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I started mixing in MK677, along with like the Blue Ox, the Epimuscle. But yeah, that happened all within 5 weeks. For somebody who hasn't been able to develop any size or muscle, like in a long period of time, to do that in 5 weeks was insane. Yeah. So I raised my body fat percentage by 1%, and then my muscle mass, I added like almost 7 pounds of muscle. Wow. So nice. So you just said, I mean, your initial thoughts, like, what are you thinking when you saw me walk in today?
Yeah, it was you've noticeably been putting on a lot of muscle. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can tell it's muscle because I see the definition in your arms. It's not fat. So you look awesome. Like you look like not a different person, but you look like a much better version of yourself, like healthy and strong.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough, man. Because you had mentioned like our first like consult. You're like, within a couple of weeks you're gonna get the same results as like a couple months, and then a month you're gonna get like a year. I'm like, this okay, like. All right, I know he's being like real positive and like I'm gonna try my best to believe him, but I was just like, man, there's no way that I'm gonna be able to do that.
So what are we doing today? We're going over what your progress has been, and then planning the next part of the cycle.
Yeah. So what I really wanted to speak with you today about is, so I had interviewed a couple of my friends from Connecticut. Really long story short, they've convinced me to just stick with 20 milligrams of ostarine per day. Mm-hmm. And And I agreed with him because I've had so much success. I didn't really understand why I should push it more, kind of like the way the risk versus reward. Mm-hmm. However, I have now stayed at 195 pounds consistently for the last 2 weeks. My strength is still going up, just nowhere near as fast as it did initially. Mm-hmm. So that's why I wanted to talk to you. Like, okay, what should the next steps be?
Yeah.
And how much risk am I really, going to see, or, the risk versus reward if I up to, say, 30 milligrams per day of ostarine, as opposed to keeping it to 20, really how much damage is going to be done there.
All right, so let's go back to the beginning on how we strategize this cycle. We started you out with the absolute lowest dose of the weakest SARM because your receptors are fresh. You've never been on anything anabolic before, and you're going to get gains from that. And going for something harsher or higher dosage isn't going to give you that much more gains as a beginner. So we started you low, and then the goal is to keep progress going quickly. So your rate of progress was extremely fast, and then it starts to plateau. At the point you start to plateau, we either increase the dosage of the SARM or other supplements that you're on, or we switch compounds, or we take a break. So we have 3 options once you start to plateau. The other thing is that we're not just taking a SARM. I designed the Anabolic Matrix to show different growth pathways and the synergy of how they work together, so you get more results with less side effects and lower dosages. So you're taking something from the anabolic column, which is the SARMs, the growth hormone column, which is the MK677, the insulin column, which is the SLIN pills, and then you got the Blue X test booster for overall health and maintaining natural testosterone production as much as possible. Now, to consider, when you increase the dosage, your friends in Connecticut are right. You increase the dosage, you increase the risk of side effects. What's the most likely side effect you're going to get? Suppression of your natural testosterone levels. Actually, it's not likely, it's definite. To what extent that matters depends on what your goals are. For me, I don't care if my natural testosterone is suppressed. I don't care if I don't produce natural testosterone ever again. I'm still fertile. I just had a child, and I've been on steroids for 6 years. So clearly, I'm not super susceptible to lower fertility or lowering or shutting down my natural testosterone production. I still naturally produce testosterone, even though I've been on testosterone for 6 years. But other people, some people have higher predisposition to side effects than others. Other people might take a low dose of SARMs and not shut down, but suppress their natural testosterone a lot more. So you don't really know, and you're taking that risk until you experiment with it.
And that's really the biggest factor as to why I've kept it so low, is because I want to make sure, especially my fertility, I want to make sure I can still produce and reproduce, my own offspring.
So if we had unlimited money to throw at it, you would be just getting constant lab work, and you'd be getting your semen analysis, which is kind of a pain because you got to come in a cup and immediately get it to the laboratory so they can test it while it's still warm.
Oh man, by then you're kind of tired, right? You just want to take a little nap.
Yeah, have someone else transport it for you. So you would be able to see your fertility dropping, or your sperm count dropping, or the health of your sperm dropping, at which point, instead of just waiting to either fertile or not fertile, you catch it somewhere in between, and then you can make an educated decision. But not everybody has the money or time, wants to go through the hassle of doing that, so you're still playing the risk. Now, I've had thousands of people report their anecdotal reports on SARMs experiments.
Yeah.
I've never had someone have infertility or shut down testosterone from SARMs. Now, they've had suppressed testosterone, in which their body's able to regenerate their natural testosterone very quickly. And whether you do a PCT or not, take certain supplements to get your natural testosterone, has a large factor in that.
Yeah.
At the dosage you're at right now, you could come off and you don't need to do a PCT. I mean, I still would, why not? But you could come off and your natural testosterone comes right back. What's happening right now, if we get your blood work done, which I recommend, and we might after this video, if we get your blood work done, I bet you would see your natural testosterone has dropped a little bit. But the SARMs have replaced all the benefits of the testosterone. You don't notice it because you don't need the testosterone. You're basically on a synthetic, better testosterone than your even natural testosterone. I would rather have SARMs running through my bloodstream than natural testosterone. Look at the advantages.
Right.
More muscle, more energy, awesome mental outlook, better performance, faster healing. You're enhanced.
Yeah, and the healing part has been crazy. I've had back issues for a really long time. My back has never felt this good in a really long time. When you said that you've seen a lot of people that have had tests suppressed, but nobody's really had any serious damage, like just so people understand, like how many people is a lot of people that you can think of, like that you've worked with?
Thousands. Even then, because everybody responds a little bit different and there's so many variables, just because you're having this experience doesn't mean someone would have the same experience. So we always have to give that disclaimer because someone else. But here's the other problem. Most of the reports you read online, people are using fake products or underdosed products or products spiked with steroids. So you have a lot of people giving SARMs feedback saying, oh, it didn't work.
Right.
Well, that's because they're not using... I mean, back in the day, Enhanced Athlete was the gold standard for SARMs, right? Mm-hmm. So anybody that used Enhanced Athlete SARMs, if they gave a report and they're being honest, that's going to be an accurate report of what the SARMs did. But for a lot of the other brands that are fake, that are now gone, mm-hmm. For those brands, people are using them and reporting, and they're not reporting data on the SARM, they're reporting data on a placebo or on a steroid or a prohormone.
So I've actually, I've kind of broke into a different demographic. So I've had people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s actually message me and say, hey, I've been, a skinny person majority of my life. I'm now getting to the age where I can't do what I used to do. Mm-hmm. My test levels are definitely shutting down. Is something like Osterine a good idea for me? So as far as the older athlete, what do you think? What's your take on an older athlete taking SARMs?
I think it actually has more application than the younger athlete. I mean, SARMs can benefit everybody, but when we get older and our natural testosterone production decreases and our ability to heal, our ability to recover, our energy levels decrease, SARMs is a way, the same way that hormone replacement therapy or testosterone replacement therapy tries to accomplish. And hormone replacement therapy is awesome also. Mm-hmm. I just prefer the SARMs because there's less potential side effects.
We had communicated when you were out of the States, and I had talked about the water retention that I was feeling. What do you attribute that to?
MK677. Okay. Because you're taking the Osterine, the Slin pills, the Blue Ox. Did you start Arachidonic Acid?
Yeah. So okay. I was doing that.
And Arachidonic acid and the MK677. Of all of those things, the only thing likely to increase water retention is MK677, and here's why. MK677 causes your body to produce its own maximum amount of growth hormone. And growth hormone causes you to retain water. Growth hormone burns fat, it breaks down to other healing peptides, it heals, that's why your back is healing so much, you recover faster from workouts, it is an absolute miracle. Mm-hmm. But it does have two major side effects, and that can be water retention, because you're retaining minerals for healing. That's part of the healing process, right? So it's not necessarily a bad thing, so long as you're monitoring your blood pressure, because then blood pressure and kidneys interact a lot. And then you could have some serious side effects if your blood pressure goes too high. Yeah. So because the other side effect is lethargy or being tired, are you experiencing any of that?
Yeah, so that was actually the next thing I was going to ask. Now, over the past about week and a half, I'm going to definitely attribute it to waking up at 3 a.m. every day and not going to bed on time.
3 a.m.?
Yes.
Why are you waking up at 3 a.m.?
So I was talking to Mark. I was just like, man, I'm not really I'm not chasing the pump anymore. I'm focusing on this conjugate system, which for strength building is amazing. The program itself, if you follow the program and trust the process, you're going to make insane gains on the bar. However, for me personally, I would leave every workout looking at the clock like, dude, I've been here for like 3 hours and I feel like I need to get more work in. So, I gave all these issues to Mark, and he looked at my excuses and took them all away. And he's like, your answer is at 4:30 a.m. with me here. But even prior to that, I was starting to notice a little bit of slowdown throughout the day. I hadn't reported it on any of the episodes just yet because I didn't really know what was going on. But now I think it's a little bit of both. It could be something going on with the SARMs, and it could be just the fact that I'm not sleeping as much. But I'm definitely noticing a little bit of slowdown throughout the day that was not there, say, week 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the Anabolic Matrix that I designed that has all these different growth pathways, one of them is sleep, rest, and recovery. It's one of the most important elements because that's when you grow the muscle. And that's actually when you burn fat. There's some magic that happens in your sleep where you're burning fat and building muscle and recovering mentally and physically. So we have to make sure you get enough sleep. The waking up early in the morning, it's fine. You can have whatever schedule you want. Definitely make sure you go to bed early enough and consider taking some kind of sleep supplements to help you adapt to that schedule and make sure you sleep enough and you sleep deeply. Now, when you're getting tired from growth hormone, which is from MK677 stimulating your own natural production of growth hormone, think of yourself as like a baby that has very high growth hormone because they need to grow a lot. Mm-hmm. So your body is now in growth mode. And you know, when you're teenage years, you have to sleep a lot more. And then sort of like in your early 20s, it's like you don't have to sleep at all. It's like you're done growing. And then as you get older, you just want to sleep more again. But now you're back in another phase. You're back in like your puberty years when your body wants to sleep and recover more because that's what the growth hormone is doing to you.
When it comes to, you know, being natty or not, here I come. Why do you think SARMs are still considered, you know, such a bad thing? Why is there still such a big bad stigma attached to them?
So if you look at people's comments online in general, rarely is it their own idea. They're being influenced by something. And the large influence usually comes from where the money's coming from. They're the ones who control the influence. So right now you have influence by big pharmaceutical companies, by the supplement industry, by anybody who makes money off the way things currently are. Mm-hmm. Now you're doing something that's pioneering, that's going outside of the norm. Everybody else is saying the world is flat. You're coming out and saying the world is round, mm-hmm. and you're getting criticism for that. Now in 20 years from now, you and I are going to be the pioneers that were right. When people look back, they'll be like, whoa, they were right. But we're going to get a lot of resistance until then. And mainly it's because of steroid companies trying to get rid of SARMs, because SARMs are a low profit margin compared to steroids. Mm-hmm. So it seriously threatens their profits. So steroid companies are investing a ton of money in misinformation trying to shut SARMs down. The big pharmaceutical industries are trying to shut SARMs down because they replace many of the pharmaceuticals that cost a lot of money that actually only treat the symptoms and not cure the disease. Most of Western medicine doesn't cure diseases, it treats symptoms, and it's very expensive. And that's a billions of dollars industry. And then you have the mainstream supplement industry, who thinks that if people realize that they can get a $60 bottle of SARMs that replaces $5,000 worth of supplements, that no one's going to buy supplements anymore, which I don't believe is true because I still think supplements and SARMs work together. But the supplement industry is very afraid of SARMs or any of these research chemicals because who's going to buy BCAAs, which do nothing, when you could buy a SARM for $60 that put on 15 pounds of muscle in 5 weeks.
Right.
So you have, and then you have one other factor. You have all these coaches and people and influencers who know steroids very well, or they know natural very well, but they don't know SARMs, and they're trying to shoot down what they don't know because all of a sudden they become obsolete and they lose their credibility if they don't stay on the cutting edge. So you've got a huge amount of motivation out there to shut down SARMs or anything cutting edge or scientific to make progress in bodybuilding or any other goal. And you have very little money or motivation behind the SARMs because the SARMs companies are not making a lot of money. With all the things they have to deal with, it's not a profitable business anymore. Mm-hmm. And so there's no money to reinvest in fighting the propaganda of all these big entities that want to shut SARMs down. It's not just SARMs. It's the cures for heart disease, cancer, diabetes, osteoporosis. All of these things exist, but nobody knows about it because they're being shut down. And usually the way they shut it down is the pharmaceutical industry, the FDA, the big supplement companies, the steroid, they'll all start pushing out false negative information, like SARMs are liver toxic, for example. See, that came directly down from the supplement industry and the pharmaceutical industry influencing the FDA, because they pretty much control the FDA through lobbying and money, to make a statement that now becomes law. It's now like a law of fact that SARMs create liver damage when that is completely false according to every experiment that I've ever run. But based on that one information, now you'll have 1,000 trolls out there regurgitating that information. And how can you argue against it when the FDA and all of the authorities out there that are controlled by all these entities that make money off it are the ones pushing out that information?
When it comes to like the toxicity of everything compared to something like ibuprofen, which is in everybody's medicine cabinet, and it's available at every store all over the place. I once, no lie, had a doctor prescribe me 1,800 milligrams of ibuprofen 3 times a day.
That's extremely toxic. So 1 day of that is more toxic than 6 months of SARMs.
Okay. So lately, it just seems like everyone's getting popped for SARMs or SARM-like compounds. And I'm talking about UFC fighters. I'm talking, heavyweight champs or aspiring champions. Like, we're talking big names in the elite sports. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on people? I mean, if they have access to everything, right? Yet they keep getting caught with SARMs and SARM-like compounds.
Everybody at the top level is using performance-enhancing drugs. The thing is, the testing procedures and what they're testing for, or what the U.S. Anti-Doping Association and World Anti-Doping Association are doing, is they don't even know what to test for until they get a tip somehow. So they're always one step behind. So professional athletes on every level are always using performance-enhancing drugs. Otherwise, they wouldn't be the best. Now, genetics and skill takes you to a certain level, but at a certain point, you have everybody who's got the top level genetics and the top level skill, and what makes the winner is the performance-enhancing drugs. So we're really kidding ourselves with all the drug testing stuff.
Yeah.
So they're getting popped, though, because now the testing is so advanced that these athletes were using SARMs a long time ago. Long before they were tested for, athletes were using SARMs. And another common question I get is, what's the detection time? Because a lot of athletes will take things up until the detection time so they can get away with it. And the problem is the detection time you can't predict anymore, because it's not just the half-life of the substance running through the bloodstream. It's also if it's stored in any of the tissue in the body and it gets released later. And now they're testing in picomillions, which is so small you can't even fathom it. So any little trace of these molecules floating around, they can actually catch it. So athletes have to be really careful. They can still stay ahead of the anti-doping rules. They can still beat the tests, but it's a lot harder, which means the coaches who are teaching people how to beat these tests are making a lot more money because it's a lot more advanced.
Is another question had rolled in, and I don't even know if we can answer this, but I guess just maybe in your experience, has anybody taken SARMs, got to work and got drug tested just for the most general drug test? And has SARMs ever been shown in that? And has anybody gotten in trouble through their employer for taking SARMs?
No. So I've coached thousands of military and police, FBI, government security, people with top secret security clearance in the U.S. government and other governments. And a lot of them are on SARMs, which there's no reason not to be. They're not illegal. Mm-hmm. There's no health drawbacks. If there are, they're very small. It's mostly health benefits. It makes them healthier and more effective at their job. So I support it. But they, in the beginning, everybody was very afraid of taking SARMs because it would show up. And I actually researched the law on the SARMs at that time. And this was a while ago, but I couldn't find any laws or restrictions against law enforcement or military taking them. Mm-hmm. So I started, I wouldn't say advising, but I started giving this information to law enforcement and military personnel, and all of a sudden it blew up. And now a large percentage of them are quietly taking it because they don't need to stir the pot. And as long as nobody stirs the pot, it'll never become a restricted compound because nobody's getting hurt by it.
So in Tony Huge's world, let's paint this future. SARMs become a little bit more accepted, but now Big Pharma gets involved. What do you think is going to happen when that does change? It's sort of like with marijuana, right? There was a couple states, I think Ohio, that tried to get a monopoly on the entire state, saying you can buy weed, but it's got to be through us only. Mm-hmm. Do you foresee something like that happening?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sort of. I'll give you both sides of it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, what happened is marijuana and these other natural compounds, we always knew they were curing herbs. They're herbs basically, and they're healthy. But what the pharmaceutical industry does is try to prevent people to get access to these things until they can make money off of it. And now Big Pharma did invent some of these SARMs. Did we need Big Pharma to do it? No. The reason why Big Pharma did it is because they have the resources to do it and they get to choose which drugs they actually get approval on. So what Big Pharma is doing right now is going and inventing these SARMs, but not actually pushing them forward for FDA approval, because some of these SARMs will actually compete with their other products. So for example, one SARM is a cure for osteoporosis. Now they have other drugs that people don't have access to that cure the symptoms of osteoporosis or are very slow at curing the disease, and they're going to make $50,000 off someone trying to cure osteoporosis. Now, when a SARM can cure someone's osteoporosis for a couple $100s, that's a huge threat to their $50,000 profit. So what do? They go back and they sabotage the drug, or they do whatever they can to get the intellectual property rights over it, but to prevent it actually getting approved, so it remains in limbo so that nobody can get access to it.
So in an industry that has, it has regulations, but it's still the Wild West right now, especially with everyone saying it's like the gray area, right? I've been getting a lot of messages from people showing me what they've purchased, and I have no idea where they could have got it from. How do we clean up what's going on right now with SARMs? We have people that are selling what they claim to be SARMs, and then people taking it and saying, oh my gosh, I'm getting all these adverse side effects, when in actuality, they're not taking true SARMs. How the hell do we clean this up?
I know how I do it for myself is I experiment with them, and I have the money to lab test them, and I have a laboratory. So that's how I do it. Coach Trevor keeps pretty good tabs on it. So people message at The Real Coach Trevor on Instagram, The Real Coach Trevor, and he keeps pretty good tabs on the different brands and what's real and what's not. The challenge too, though, is a lot of these companies will start out by selling real SARMs, and then they'll switch to fake later, just enough to build a reputation, and then they'll coast off higher profits. And also what happens is, back when Enhanced Athlete was dominating the worldwide SARMs, Enhanced Athlete was buying the entire supply from every major manufacturer of actual quality pharmaceutical grade SARMs. There was no SARMs left. There wasn't any left for any other companies to buy. So I know back then that most of the other SARMs were fake, because I know they didn't have enough inventory to coast when there was no supply that Enhanced Athlete wasn't buying up worldwide. So I know that nearly all the brands were fake for a period of time other than Enhanced Athlete.
Wow.
Now, Enhanced Athlete still does a lot of SARM sales outside the United States, but not within the United States, because Big Pharma and the large supplement industry and the FDA came after Enhanced Athlete. Why did they come after Enhanced Athlete and not the other countries? Well, number one, Enhanced Athlete was higher profile. But number two is because it was real stuff. So the FDA actually came in and tested all the Enhanced Athlete stuff, and it turned out to be all legit, real, and properly dosed. And the FDA and the government and the supplement industry saw that as a threat. So they don't see fake SARMs as a threat, because then people are going to get side effects, or they're not going to get it. They're going to report badly on it, and they're trying to push the propaganda against SARMs. But if a company comes out and has real stuff, then all of a sudden they become public enemy. They become attacked because they actually could build momentum that people are going to start supporting these products.
Okay, so taking it back to my cycle. Again, so I think it's safe to say that I've plateaued now at 195. Today I woke up at 197. On just the bathroom scale, so I don't know exactly how accurate that could be. The water retention has gone down, so I did kind of peak to 198, but now that's coming down to 195, 196 area. This morning, I don't know, maybe I ate a little bit extra yesterday, but I know for sure I'm at 195. Have I gotten the most out of my dosages right now? Is there something else I should be doing with my diet? What's the next step for me right now?
So the way I can tell that if I'm plateauing is if my muscles don't feel anabolic anymore. And maybe not everybody's as in tune with their body as I am, but I can feel like how responsive am I to exercise? Is my strength going up? Mm-hmm. How's my sleep? So when I feel like my muscles are going flat, despite having adequate carbohydrates and adequate sodium, potassium, electrolytes, then I know that I've stopped responding to the compound or responding less to it. At which point you have the choices to increase the dose, switch the compound, or take a break and start up again. So if you want to keep this experiment going, which I would if I were you, I would keep going and push the limit until something bad happens. More dramatic. That's my style.
Yeah.
But your choice is you're at 20 milligrams of MK2866 ostarine, osteomuscle. And your next step would be 30 milligrams, which you could take maybe 20 milligrams at night or 20 milligrams in the morning, and then 10 milligrams the other time of day, something like that. If you step it up, you're probably going to get more gains. You're probably going to break through the plateau, and you probably still won't have any side effects, but your natural testosterone is probably going to dip a little bit. And as far as your gains are concerned, your natural testosterone dipping a little bit also means that your natural estrogen is going to dip a little bit, which as you go up and up in SARMs, one of the limiting factors becomes your estrogen levels, because if your estrogen levels go down, you can hold less glycogen in the muscle, you have a little bit less recovery and a little bit less water retention inside the muscle, which actually helps muscle growth. So at some point, if you go up and up and up and your testosterone levels go down and down and down, then we'll talk about adding some estrogen in to be synergistic with the SARM, but that's later. For now, I think you could go up to 30 milligrams of the ostarine, osteomuscle, or you could switch to another compound if you wanted to bulk, something like the ligandrol LGD 4033, or if you wanted to cut, something like the RAD 140. I'm not saying you take S23. I think that's too strong for you to start out with still. But just so you know, there's other SARMs that are so powerful, they're more powerful than steroids. You could technically stick with the SARMs and have a protocol that's even more powerful than you even taking trenbolone and mastrone and these other hardcore steroids just on SARM.
You just triggered a lot of people. A lot of people don't want to hear that this could work better than tren. Like,
yeah,
that's everyone's.
You can do SARM cycles more effective than steroid cycles with less side effects. But that requires higher dosages of harsher SARMs. And it would be really interesting if your fiance let you take it to that level. Because you could just keep stepping. You could just stay on SARMs the next year and just keep stepping up the dosage, switch compounds. Keep stepping up the dosage, switch compounds. And every time you use a little bit more of a hardcore SARM and a little bit more of some of these other growth pathways we talked about. More Slen pills, more arachidonic acid, more other supplements, more sleep supplements to make you sleep deeper, and then adding in other things. Like you could also do SARMs. This is what people don't understand, is if you take SARMs plus growth hormone and insulin, that will far blow away any steroids only. Because in steroids, you're only dealing with the androgen receptor. There is some effects outside the androgen receptor, but most of what steroids do are within the androgen receptor inside the muscle. Once you start adding these other growth pathways in to SARMs, then you start getting more synergy than even the steroids can give you.
All right. So looking back at our first interview, have you got a chance to check it out? Like, have you seen any of the comments inside the old YouTubes?
Yeah, I did read some of the comments, and I can clear up some of these things that the people who are commenting are assuming. Number one, they say if I experiment or I'm such an expert on SARMs and steroids, then why am I not bigger? Well, that's because muscle growth or maintaining, I can put on 20 pounds of muscle in 1 month because I know how to do it with the chemistry that very few people in the world know how to do it. I don't do that because I'm constantly experimenting. So once I find out what works, I move on to another experiment. I don't just stick with what works and take it to the max, because what's going to happen? I gain too much muscle. I'm like a pro bodybuilder. I can't breathe at night. I can't wipe my own ass. I'm 225 pounds at 7.5% body fat. I'm what most people could only dream of having, this physique. I don't think the camera really does it justice, but when fans meet me in person, they'll understand. I have a superhuman physique that is beyond what most classic physique professional bodybuilders have year round, because I maintain this all year round, which very few of them do. So I do use the experiments that work to the extent that it maintains this physique, but I don't take it to the next level, because if I put on that much more size, it significantly impacts my health. People also don't realize that steroids themselves are not unhealthy. They are not toxic like people think they are. They can be used responsibly and healthy, but it's not the steroids that cause the problems, it's the body weight. So when these huge bodybuilders get to 300 pounds, just the fact that they're 300 pounds is what's taxing their health more than anything, not the fact that they use steroids to get there. If they could get to 300 pounds natty, they would be just as unhealthy at 300 pounds on steroids as they are off steroids. I do not want to weigh 300 pounds. I could do it. I don't want to do it. The other comment I saw was hair. The audience thought that I was losing my hair, but the truth is my hair has actually grown back since I stopped becoming a lawyer. So I was lawyering full time up until 3 years ago maybe. That makes me lose my hair. Baby mama stress makes me lose my hair. I mean, it's notable when you feel a lot of stress, like from work. You know, me being a lawyer is one of the most stressful jobs it could have had because the amount of cases I had. I was one of the biggest bankruptcy law firms in all of Northern California. So I had, thousands of cases on my plate. That's very stressful because I take each case very personally. I care about my clients so much. And then you got baby mama who had my first daughter, being a very difficult person to deal with sometimes, causing me stress. And then for hair, also massages. When I go, I get tons of massages and they always massage my hair and they're ripping my hair out. So I've had some hair loss from steroids, but it's so minor. And as soon as you stop, like let's say we do a Winstrol or a Trenbolone actually. Okay, so some of the steroids, they cause my hair loss, not because of the steroid, but because they cause anxiety. Like Trenbolone causes me anxiety. And then as a result, I get hair loss. But it seems to be that any steroid-related hair loss I ever had, it grows right back. But the stress-related hair loss, it doesn't. And Coach Trevor, who's completely bald, people think it's because of steroids, but he'll tell you that even after he's just done blasting all the steroids, it wasn't until he started fighting with his ex-wife, his hair all fell out during that period that he wasn't even taking that much steroids, but he was fighting with his wife.
That makes sense. And I always wear a hat because I've been balding since I was like 23. So
Coach Trevor designed a hair growth formula. It's pretty remarkable. He just started using it on his head and hair is growing for the first time since he lost all his hair. So he can get you some of that. Let's see. What else was some of the comments about? Criticizing that I'm trying to promote SARMs because I make money off of SARMs. When the truth is I don't make money off of anything. And my agreement with the CEO of Enhanced Athlete when it was started was that any money that I cause by even doing videos or anything, the company to make must be reinvested into research and development.
Wow.
Not come to my pocket. So I had no financial incentive other than to further the science in the industry. And I think that's what set what I did apart from everything else out there and that people can't fathom and can't understand. There's nobody else. I've never met anyone in the fitness industry who wasn't in it to make money. My father died of cancer. My aunt died of cancer. My grandfather died. My grandmother died, Alzheimer's. They all died of diseases that were totally curable, but they all relied on Western medicine. Western medicine killed my entire family. And what's the worst part is I watched my father die the most painful, horrific, slow death. And when I see people eating the foods they do and believing what the government says or pharmaceutical industry says that they care about them, and I saw what my father went through, that's what really bothers me. I do not want people to die slow, painful deaths or have a lower quality of life. I want them to have the information, knowledge, and tools to be able to heal and cure themselves. And this battle between me and truth on one side and the government and the pharmaceutical industries and censorship and profits on the other side. And unfortunately, you have Facebook, Instagram, YouTube that are all starting to now be controlled by legislation that's being passed by lobbying groups that are funded by these industries that make money. And they're starting to control the flow of information to us. So I'm hoping that people will look outside the media outlets that they're currently available to them, start opening up their mind, not jump to conclusions. Right now, the way it is someone says SARMs are bad and they say, oh, SARMs are bad. And now they've discounted it and they're never going to be interested in it. What I want them to say is someone said SARMs are bad. Why are they saying that? Who is saying it? Where is it really coming from? What is their motivation? Understand that the person that's actually saying the information might not be the actual source. The source of the information comes from up here and it's trickled down and people are just sheep that just regurgitate the information. And that's not what I stand for. It's not what you stand for. I know because you're doing this experiment. You're saying all I hear is, SARMs all this negativity around it. And yet I met Tony Huge, and look at how it improved his quality of life. And I've talked to a few other people, and now Mark Bell said that SARMs work. How is there this disconnect between what the mainstream media wants us to believe and what I'm actually seeing with my own eyes? And try to resolve that through self-experimentation. Of course, taking the risks and responsibility of the negative possible outcomes.
Again, I'm kind of like at a crossroads. Push ostarine a little bit more. Is it there? Is it the diet? Is it both? Or is it switching compounds? Is it taking a break? Like, what should my next step be?
This year at 20 milligrams of ostarine, I would step it up to 30 milligrams of ostarine and do that until you feel any kind of plateau.
How many weeks should I take ostarine to 30 milligrams per day?
Until you plateau.
Okay.
Or until you're just ready to shred. Gotcha. And you could still shred on ostarine by just manipulating your carbohydrates in your diet.
Awesome. Yeah. Mark had recommended that just pick one meal where I would normally have carbs, whether it be rice, vegetables, and just pull it out. Just do just the protein, and then we'll go from there.
Exactly.
So I'm glad that everybody that I'm looking up to right now is in sync with what they're telling me. So with all these self-experimentations going on that you have been researching and whatnot, what's the next experiment for Tony Huge?
So the last experiment I did was in the Philippines, and that was the short high dosage 100 milligrams a day of S23, which went amazing, and I'll be publishing the content on that. Now, Generation Irons contacted me and wants me to do this crazy transformation stuff for the next movie. So we're going to start filming that next week, small clips, and it's going to build up, and we're going to be filming over 3 months, and we're going to take some people and push more drugs in them than you've ever seen before. I mean, it's going to be a lot, but we're going to show you how it's possible to put on 20 pounds of muscle in 1 month on someone who is already completely plateaued. But the enhanced transformations is going to be the YouTube series that I'm doing that's behind the scenes of the transformations that we're doing for the Next Generation Iron movies. Nice. So people need to just look up enhanced transformations, and then also I'll give previews of things on the Dr. Tony Huge Instagram. So by searching YouTube for enhanced transformations, and then also following the Instagram Dr. Tony Huge, then they can get updates on how these experiments are going. And I myself am going to do one of the experiments. I'm going to show people what it's like to put on muscle extremely fast. My only limiting factor is that it does require a lot more sleep, and I'm really busy. So it's going to take a big sacrifice in my schedule, because I just said how I like to use the chemistry as a shortcut. But if I want to put on an extreme amount of muscle very quickly, all of a sudden now it's not an experiment. It's actually doing it, and doing the bodybuilding lifestyle and taking the level of drugs that it takes to put on massive amounts of muscle very quickly is exhausting.
Guys, this is Dr. Tony Huge. I think Instagram probably be the best way and most up-to-date information that you'll find on him. If you guys want to hit him up, you guys know how to do so, whether you do or you don't, whatever. It's up to you guys. But dude, thanks again, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate everything, dude.
You're welcome.
Thank you
and
so
good
much.
luck on this transformation. It's
yeah.
Amazing to see the progress, and I'm glad to hear you haven't had any side effects. But I think the audience is going to want some dramatic side effects somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
So for my own personal viewing pleasure in the audience, it would be interesting to see you keep taking this thing, keep going until we hit that point of side effects, and then we got something really interesting to talk about.
Don't give them any ideas.